Great to see you all. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. As Mike mentioned, I'm the program manager for VentureCat. So in collaboration with my awesome team members here at the Garage, as well as partnering with units across the university, I help to oversee the planning and coordination of the various different activities that go into hosting VentureCat every year. So as you might already know, VentureCat is Northwestern's annual cross-university student startup competition that takes place each May. But prior to the competition, the selected semifinalist teams also participate in a 4-week pitch prep program. And through this program, they're given access to pitch coaches and industry advisors to help prepare and practice for the pitch competition, as well as graphic design services to put together a pitch deck. Right. And one of the reasons this programming is so valuable is because it pulls in the units that help support and organize VentureCat and the startup ecosystem here at the university. And those include the Donald Pritzker Entrepreneurial Law Center, the Farley Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Kellogg's Program of Entrepreneurship, and of course the team here at the Garage. In terms of getting ready to apply, one thing I like to mention is that we typically see a range of business development stages represented by the applicants that apply to the competition. So there are going to be teams that are in the earlier stages of testing and validating key assumptions about their businesses, all the way to those that have launched a product or service and may be generating revenue. And we welcome and encourage teams from across the spectrum to apply. But in order to apply, it's really important that you are beyond the initial idea stage. So the application reviewers are going to be looking for examples from student teams to illustrate what they've done to validate the magnitude of the problem they're trying to solve, that there's demand and interest in your proposed solution, and just other key learnings that help us see your path and progress made towards launching a product or service that meets a market need. And additionally, because one of the primary aims of VentureCat is to support the growth and development of student-founded ventures at Northwestern, we're also looking to see a level of commitment to working on the venture beyond just the competition. All right. One great exercise, and just something I recommend you do just so you know how you're being evaluated, is to check out the evaluation criteria. It can help you kind of understand, are you at a stage where you've completed enough progress where you're ready to apply, and also highlight areas where you may need to focus more time and energy on over the coming weeks before the application opens in March. The evaluation criteria is the same criteria used for both the application and at the competition. And the full criteria are on the website, the VentureCat website, but they all roll up into one of these 4 areas. Okay, so the semifinals are organized by these 5 tracks, and likewise the application is set up for students to apply to one of the 5 tracks. We do tend to see the most applications submitted to the business products and services and the consumer products and services tracks. So if you do have a company, say a social impact consumer product, we're going to recommend that you apply to the social impact track rather than the consumer products track. There's something else that I forgot. The application review committee does have the discretion to move an entry into a different track if they find that there might be a more appropriate track than the one the student selected. All right, another great way to learn more about the competition as well as the types of teams that we typically see make it to the point of semifinals is to watch some of the recordings of the showcases from previous years. And there's also a handful of semifinalist pitches from when the competition was held virtually in 2020 and 2021, and all that is available on the VentureCat YouTube channel. Okay. So now we're about to get into some more specific details about the 2024 timeline, what's on the application, and some eligibility requirements and restrictions that are good for you all to know about. But does anybody have any high-level questions about what I've gone over so far? Good? All right. Oh, you do, okay, great.
Thank you for sharing. My name is OG. So my question is, do you allow startups with co-founders who are non-students to participate?
Yes, we do. Yes, and I will get more into that shortly. But basically, the main requirement is that this competition is only open to Northwestern teams that have a Northwestern student on it. It can't be just anybody outside. But it's what you're fine to have people that are not involved at Northwestern on the startup as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So moving along. So we'll host. Obviously, we're hosting this info session, and we'll host another info session in winter quarter, as well as some other programming related to business entity formation and founders agreements in early winter quarter. And then the application itself will open on March 15th, which is a Friday, and it'll be open for 2 weeks until Sunday, March 31st at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll have it closed. There will be a period of time where it's being reviewed by the application review team, and then the selected semifinalists will be notified and announced on April 16th. And then the very next day, the pitch prep program begins and will run through to May 17th, which is a Friday. And then that following Wednesday, May 22nd, will be the day of VentureCat. It is a full day of programming from the morning into the evening, so it's just something to keep in mind, and it will take place over at the Kellogg Global Hub. All right. Here we have a list of some of the required activities for the semifinalists, and if they're in person and virtual. As I mentioned, the competition day, all the semifinalists do need to be able to be on the Evanston campus to participate in person. We'll also hold a semifinalist kickoff meeting on April 17th here at the garage, and we do ask that at least one person from each team be present at that meeting as well. And then for the meetings with pitch coaches and advisors and the graphic designers, those will take place virtually. And then each team will also have one quick check-in meeting with me sometime throughout the pitch prep program. And those can take place in person or virtually. Okay. In terms of what's on the application, there will be a series of questions that are connected back to that evaluation criteria I mentioned earlier. We ask you to share a link to an elevator pitch video. It does not have to be sophisticated, and in fact, it shouldn't be. It should just be you speaking to the camera about your business. A 10-slide pitch deck. And I will talk more about this shortly, but all teams at the point of application do need to be able to upload proof of business entity registration. And so that will be a W-9 form for students that have businesses based in the United States and a W-8 for foreign-based entities. And again, I'll go into that more in just a moment. All right, so the eligibility requirements and restrictions that I'm going to cover are just some of the more high-level, significant requirements that are important for you to all know about, but I do recommend that you read through the complete eligibility requirements and program rules and guidelines which are available on the website just prior to putting forth an application, just so you fully understand all that's expected and required of you. All right. So as I was mentioning earlier, all teams must consist of at least one Northwestern student that is a currently enrolled degree-seeking student, and that student must be a founder or a co-founder and have substantial equity in the business. Additionally, all applicants are required to attest that their team has or will have a signed agreement that outlines the equity ownership of the company by the date of VentureCat. Okay. So this was what I was mentioning earlier in the application. At the time of application, all applicants need to have a registered business entity and will be asked to upload proof of that entity agreement or documentation to their application. So that's going to be either a W-9 for US-based entities or a W-8 for foreign-based entities. And we will have some additional programming that will give information about how to go through that process coming up over the next couple of weeks, and then again in the winter quarter. And there's also a really useful website that's called the Northwestern Student Business Formation website. There's a link here on this slide, and there's also one at the end of the deck that you can check out. It is NetID protected, but again, it has some really helpful information there if that's something that you need to set up before you apply. All right. So at the point where you are selected as, if you are selected as a semifinalist, in order to receive any prize money, you actually need to have a US-based business entity and be able to provide a W-9 with employer identification number. And the reason for that is that all of the payments, the prize payments that are awarded to students are awarded to the student venture and not the student participants. And we are unable to pay foreign-based entities, and that's guidance that comes from Northwestern's general counsel, and so we just don't have any flexibility where that's concerned. So that's just something to know about up front. And yeah, okay.
Just as a quick heads up,
Yes.
just to mention,
Yeah.
Part of the reason we have these info sessions so early is because forming a business entity and getting an EIN from the IRS is not something that you can do last minute. So don't think you can just open the application and do it. It can take weeks. So make sure, part of the reason we have this early is that so you can make sure if you know that you're committed to applying to VentureCat, that you can go form, and as Sarah said, we'll have more resources and a workshop on business entity formation, but it's something that you're gonna wanna do like February at the latest to have it ready for the application in March. So not something that you should put off for the last minute.
Yes, thank you for emphasizing that. Yeah, it can take a little bit, and it's just helpful to kind of think about what kind of entity you want to form and so forth. So, all right. So the last couple of slides have touched on things that you need to have in place, and these last two restrictions are related to things that would make you ineligible. And those are if your business has raised more than $250,000 in equity capital, you are ineligible to participate unless you were a current student at the time that funding was raised. And then the other one is that if your business was founded more than 4 years prior to the application deadline, you're also ineligible to compete. We do have some exceptions that we can make if for some, like you've significantly changed the direction of the business and you're just basically using the entity, we would allow something like that, but we don't want to be, theoretically, if you're 4 years into a company, your chances are you're not at the right phase for this program. So, all right. And as I've mentioned, we've got some upcoming programming to help support international student founders. There will be a session here at the garage next Thursday over the lunch hour. That QR code on the screen is a link to or will direct you to the registration page. And yeah, so that's a great option for students to learn about ways to navigate that process as an international student. And then we'll have a handful of other winter quarter programming take place, another info session, some legal office hours, and that business entity formation workshop that will take place somewhere like around early to mid-February. And announcements about those events will go out once the dates are set, and they'll go out to the student VentureCat email listserv. So if your names are on there, you'll get those announcements, and there's a link on the slide here to sign up. And yeah, so these last few slides are these last links are just things that I referenced during the session, and we will be sharing out this deck with everyone that registered as well. Sorry, I should have flagged that at the beginning. But with that, I'd like to quickly turn it over to Charlotte to share a little bit about the participant experience.
Okay, this is Penny, everyone. She's also kind of the garage's dog, so she hangs with me. Yeah, she was in fact the prize last year at VentureCat. I did pick her up maybe 2 weeks after VentureCat. You're good. So yeah, like Sarah mentioned, I won the grand prize at VentureCat last year. I actually applied to VentureCat 3 times though over those 3 years. I didn't even make it to semifinals the first time. I was a semifinalist the second time and then won in the finals the third time. Okay, sorry. She's just gonna go chill over there for a sec. So Mostly want to do this as like a Q&A, so it's actually helpful to you guys. But for context about what my company is and where we were when we won VentureCat, I build Cue the Curves, which is a social shopping app for plus size fashion. By the time we won VentureCat, we had existed in app stores for a year, had right around 2,000 users who had registered on the platform. They were not 2,000 active users, but they were there. And we had done quite a bit around validating previous models through websites and also talking with brands and other partners about our revenue model. So we were definitely like already existing in the space. I had gone through the Jumpstart pre-accelerator here at Northwestern and also Techstars Chicago's accelerator for some support along the ways. But yeah, like I said, this is much better if it's a Q&A to help you guys understand what the best things are to prepare so that you could potentially win. So with that being said, anyone have any questions? Hey.
Oh yeah. Besides like obviously the company getting more mature and acquiring more users and all that, do you think there's like many other factors that change between you applying the other times and you winning this time?
Yeah, I think a big part of the difference was I understood what the future roadmap of the business actually looked like. I think the first couple times I applied, I was like, hey, it's a huge market, it's super important, and here are multiple ways we can make money. But by the time the third application, we were like, here's the actual roadmap of us making money, here's how we scale it, and here's how we're going to go about actually successfully taking those steps. And I think that was a big change from just being like, our business model is hopefully affiliate money. Penny has many questions. I did, yeah. I got a lot more vulnerable on my third application. I was willing to talk actually about like really why I built Cue the Curves, which came a lot out of being bullied as a kid and my personal experiences with how being in a larger body affected like how the world viewed me and my own level of self-confidence. And I think I had alluded to that previously, but being able to really articulate like, here's why I am a founder who is the person to build this company and no one could just take my business model and do it themselves tomorrow is a really compelling argument from a judge's mind, because they're like, okay, you're sharing this company with the whole world. Why can someone not just copy everything you've done up to this point and do it better than you tomorrow? And for me, that answer was like, well, no one else has had the experiences I've had to the degree I've had them. Sorry, I know I switched sides. Apologies if that messed up anything. Other questions?
Oh. Oh, got it. So on that note, how did you kind of say, like, I have the expertise for this?
Yeah, so when I won, I did have a team behind me. There were 3 of us working on it, plus a couple advisors who we had brought on. But I think it was more so talking about, hey, here are the skill sets that are needed to build this company. And here's why our team fulfills all of those skill sets. And I think you can do that with one person. You can do that with a team of 5. It really comes down to, hey, there's 4 key functions that need to exist for this business to ever actually happen. And here's why we've already hit those 4 things. Or on the alternative, here's the one we don't have yet, but we already have a strategy of how we're going to bring in someone with that skill set using the money or using X, Y, or Z. Yeah, in the middle, gray shirt.
On the like personal story kind of topic, if the personal story or like the inspiration for the business came from a non-Northwestern member of the team, is that something you feel like can still be infused? Because I know I read online that only the current student can be pitching. So is that something that should still be in the application and not the pitch, or what's?
Yeah, I think, and correct me if I misspeak at any point, Sarah, but I think that can totally be a part of the pitch. I think you can have a really compelling story. I've seen really compelling pitches that are like customer stories or are like, this is our co-founder so-and-so, here's what he went through or she went through. As long as it's really authentic, I think that still can be just as equally powerful, even if it's not that person directly saying this was my experience.
Cool. Thanks.
So I'm not sure if this is for you or for Sarah, but in the 5 tracks that are there for the semifinalists, is there any requirement that's specific to those tracks, or do you have to set up your pitch deck specific to that kind of track?
Oh, my mic.
So we do have some guidance on the website, like particularly, I mean, B2B and B2C, it's more who's this directed towards, but for the energy and sustainability track as well as the social impact track, we do have some guidance on the website about which track, do I meet kind of these criteria for applying to that track? And then I would, I mean, if that is like the lens with which you're solving this problem, I definitely would incorporate that into your pitch. I mean, it doesn't have to be everything, but I think that if you're applying to one of those tracks, you're definitely going to want to lean into that, that element of it. Yeah.
But all of the actual requirements are the same.
Yes. Yes, you're right. There's no specific evaluation changes based on the different track you're in. It's all straight across the same, regardless of track. Thank you. Yeah.
I think there was one other question.
You've participated thrice, so I kind of want to know what kind of changes did you make each time? What did you learn? What were the common mistakes that we should avoid making?
Yeah. So the first time I applied, I don't think I even knew what Cue the Curves was gonna be. So I think having an actual very clear vision of not just the company's future, but also your future with the company is really important. I was a sophomore the first time I applied. I didn't know if I was getting internships. I didn't know if I wanted to go full time ever. And that is obviously not a very compelling story when they're trying to decide who to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to. So then I think between the second and third time, there was a lot of room left for me to prove a lot of things that I could prove for no money. And so I think the feedback I got back during the semifinals from the judges were like, you're on the right track, but there's this huge opportunity of so much work you could do that's not going to cost you anything that you should go do and then come back. Because we just weren't at a point yet where money was going to make the actual key difference in proving things in the business. Other questions based off of that? No. No. Ma'am.
Thank you. Is a component of the application or the actual pitch competition involving like the business plan that you would put forth if you won the money?
So yes, but not in a formal aspect. So there's no like paper, here's my business plan, submit it like it's a class situation. But a big part of it is like, how would you use these funds towards the business? What is that look like? How would they change your company? And obviously I think a natural part of pitching a business is pitching what the future of that business looks like. So the business plan is sort of infused throughout, but there's no formal business plan aspect.
Thank you.
I understand that like everything's important, but would you say that the most important is user validation and engaging user interest in your product?
Yeah, I think the most important is user understanding and then also proving that users would actually put dollars behind a solution and that there's enough users that the business case makes sense. So that can look differently to different people. If you have something that's going to have a ton of users, but they are all worth very little versus like you only need 5 users, but they're going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars. But any proof you can show that you actually made sure the users you say are going to use your product want to use your product and are willing to actually put money on the table for your product is going to be the most compelling story to tell.
Yeah, I wanted to know what's the immediacy that the judges are looking for you to spend that money?
So it gets dispersed over a year after winning the competition, based off of milestones that make sense for your business. It's not a like one size fits all situation. But I think the expectation is that it would start to actively be utilized over that year. I don't think it would be a very compelling story to tell that you just wanted to fill your bank account and sit on it for a couple years. But it also isn't like this all needs to be spent in the next 3 months. I think a year is a pretty typical timeline that the expectations are around, if not shorter, if you have like a compelling case for why you were going to use it pretty rapidly.
Can you speak more specifically about the differences between each of your pitches the 3 times that you applied?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, the first 2 kind of blurs. Can't really remember much of them. Blacked out while doing them. But I think the core differences is the first one was just like, hey, this is a big problem and I wanna solve it. But I didn't really talk about how I was gonna solve it or the business case of it at all. The second one was, hey, this is a big problem and we kind of know how to solve it, but we haven't done the work yet to prove that this will solve it. So I think that's where the gap was we talked a little bit about the theoretical business case. And then the third one, we had hard numbers to say, hey, here's what we've proven. Here's the experience of our customers. Here's why it's a really big pain point. And here's how we've actually proven that we can solve that pain point. Now we need to just scale it to thousands and thousands more people, which was a much easier story to tell. Oh, yeah. I'm a firm believer. I think everyone should, because you get great feedback on any stage, because you get to hear what the judges said about you. I would also say I'm a firm believer that if you are not excited enough about your business to apply to like a really great pitch competition that's just for Northwestern students with like real money on the table, then you might not be excited enough about your business yet. So that like, I would argue anyone who's passionate enough about their company that they're considering it should do it.
So you said you first applied when you were a sophomore. So how were you able to balance school and working for a startup?
The garage was a big part of it in normalizing, I think, what my day-to-day schedule was. When I wasn't in class, I was here. I made strategic decisions around distributing my classwork so that I didn't have any really crazy quarters, and just had to be really intentional throughout. But I credit a lot of it with the fact that most of my close friends were founders, so it felt very normal that we were all, staying up late on a Friday night working on work stuff instead of at a party. And then I think on top of that, it's also like having a really great network to lean on of team members and mentors and being strategic about what's actually going to be worth the most of your time. And then I also made some decisions that Northwestern probably wouldn't approve about going and not going to classes. So we don't need to go into that.
Yeah,
I passed everything. I got my degree. It's fine.
A question for both Charlotte and Sarah. You mentioned the funding was dispersed over the year.
Yes.
So that's over the fiscal year, right?
Up until I think I was given until spring break
And
of the following year.
because this is not based on equity, this would be counted as income, which is taxable.
Yes, you do have to put away money for taxes. Super fun.
Yes.
It's also the first and second place prizes are handled a little differently than the rest just because of the dollar amount. So the lower value prizes are dispersed as one lump.
I think this is a question probably more for Sarah. Can you describe some of the parameters around what social impact means here for this competition?
Yeah, so we try not to put too hard of a parameter around it in truth, just because we just don't know what's going to come every year. But I would say that we want to see that having a social impact focus is a big part of your business. We don't want you shoehorning your idea into just so that you can apply to the social impact track. You really want that. And from what all that Charlotte's talking about, just the I think the authenticity that goes into it. I think sometimes the judges can tell, or the reviewers can tell if it feels like you're kind of forcing it into the track. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have to be super economically literate and have a large like amount of knowledge around like the just business and everything to like kind of seem like you know what you're doing?
That's such a fair question. I think you have to be literate in your business, but you don't have to be literate in like a get an economics degree way. But I think it is like you should understand the numbers that power your business and your business model. You should know if you're selling a product that costs $20, you should know that your product doesn't cost you more than $20 to make. So those sort of like core understanding of your business from that direction, but you don't have to be an MBA and spouting out 3-letter acronyms by any means.
Also, if you're a semifinalist, part of the pitch prep program, you'll have pitch coaches and a track advisor to lean on that can help you get up to speed on what terms, concepts you should know. So it's definitely a good resource to get up to speed on that stuff as well.
Yeah, and the pitch advisors are also really great at being like, hey, you put it in this format, but it's much more compelling if you put it in this format. So there's definitely advice and support on that standpoint. And also, you can reach out to people in the garage now about those questions and get that education before VentureCat.
Sorry if I missed this in the beginning. Is there a different process or requirements for a nonprofit in terms of applying?
No, it's the same. Yeah, the evaluation criteria, the application questions, they're all the same, regardless of what track you're applying to or end up participating in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh.
Sure. No, ma'am.
So after
You
the
ran
second
too
time,
fast. You got
after
her
the second
excited.
time when you were going into your third time, you said you had more validation, you got the numbers. Who did you speak with? What did you ask? And then what did you find out from that and bringing it into your third
In
time?
terms of like understanding that I had the validation,
Yeah, and
or-
like what exactly were the numbers that you presented that third time that really
Yeah, so the second time we applied, the app had been in app stores like maybe 5 months. And I think we had under 1,000 or just barely 1,000 users at that point that weren't very active. I think the big turning point was we actually proved how to acquire users. And so it didn't just seem like a fluke, sort of like, oh, we got 1,000 users when we launched and then nothing happened after that. And we actually understood the business economics a lot better to be able to prove how we could scale and become an actually like VC backable, scalable business. And that came from pitches to investors in between and hearing what they said. That came from talking with potential brand partners that we were bringing on. And also just like having more time in market to test things and actually analytically backing what we were doing, and keeping track of what we were doing. I think previously we had kind of had a very throw everything at the wall and see what sticks method, which while it can happen to get you success every once in a while, we had no way of then looking back and saying, here's how we can do that again. So it wasn't as compelling of a story as being like, hey, we tracked the metrics and we tracked testing this versus testing that. And if you gave me $150,000, I would double down on this because I actually know it'll work. Was a lot easier than like, we tried 12 things and we somehow got some users.
Yeah, so I know you mentioned that in your pitch you should basically explain what you're planning to do with the prize money or how your business needs it.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just wondering, for your pitch specifically, or do you suggest this in the future, that you should have a plan for what your business is going to do for each level of the prize money? Did you have like different?
No,
different
just
plans
go for the grand prize. What would you do with the grand prize? Don't put it in their minds what you could do with just third place.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the reason why we're passing the mic around is this is getting recorded, so we want to be able the recording to capture everybody's questions. Just flagging that.
A little bit away from VentureCat, I wanted to ask how the past few months have been after VentureCat for Cue the Curve.
Crazy. We got a lot of really great PR off of winning VentureCat, and then some really great Northwestern connections actually that came from VentureCat. Ended up on CBS Mornings, the national talk show, which gave us a huge boost, and have continued scaling since. We have some exciting PR video stuff that I'm not allowed to publicly talk about yet, but comes out next week, so keep your lookout for the Slack. But I think it's been, for us, it was a huge validator. It took the pressure off of fundraising right after graduation. So it meant that I could actually focus on scaling the business with the team we had and not have to go take really bad terms from investors because we were strapped for cash. And it let me go full time right after graduation, which was a big game changer for us. And so since then, it's really been about scaling up our retention and our user acquisition, which is just the name of the game when you're in social apps. But yeah, it's been great.
Oh,
Great.
What did you use the money for?
Yeah, so we used it to support our team being full-time, which meant that we could build way faster than we were going to build if we were part-time. So we did an entire overhaul of the app, released a bunch new community features to focus more on our social aspects because we realized that was where the real value prop lied for our users. And we've also invested in different events and user acquisition tools specifically to be able to interact face-to-face with both some of the biggest creators in our industry, but also with our users, and to get, opportunities to speak with them in person and build relationships with them that have been really invaluable.
Okay, so yeah, I saw that there's like 25 semifinalists, but there was one for each of the 5 tracks. Like,
Yeah,
how does that work?
So there's 25 semifinalists. There are usually 4 to 6 teams in each track. It kind of depends on the competitiveness of the tracks, the applications that come in. Sometimes we'll give 4 in some and 6 in another. And then for the finalists, there's the first place winner in each track, as well as 1 wild card team. So those come from the second place teams in each track. It's kind of like, where was there the biggest kind of fight for which should be first and second place? That will go to the wild card.
So the morning of the competition, all 25 teams pitch live. They decide over lunch who are the finalists, and then the finalists pitch live to a new set of judges the second time, and then they get announced at night. So that's the difference. Oh yeah, and then you pitch in the showcase too, but the decision was already made before the showcase. Except for the
Yeah,
audience.
you see the 6. You see.
You see finals.
Yeah, you see-
Semifinals is behind closed doors.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Can I know who will be the judges?
We don't disclose that information up front. Mainly just, try and keep it as fair as possible. But it is generally, we don't use faculty. We try and secure only people external, founders, entrepreneurs, investors, that sort of a thing. But yes, we don't normally share. But I will say for the tracks that are more specialized, like the energy and medical and social impact, we do try and find folks that have that background, so they will understand the concepts that are being discussed in those presentations. Yeah.
Thank you. And I also have a question for how many people in your team right now, and what's your future story for your company at this point?
Yeah, so our team is 3 people full-time, 2 contractors that we have pretty consistent ongoing relationships with. In terms of, we see 1 or 2 positions we'll bring on after a next round of fundraising, but we plan to stay a pretty small team. And then I don't remember what the second half of your question was.
The future of the company.
You and your future with the company.
Oh yeah, so our plan is to grow it as big as we can. The vision is to really continue to scale until we have sort of a self-sustaining social platform, and then to take the insights and the access to that platform to then go and support the 92% of brands that aren't yet size inclusive become size inclusive. So our focus right now is helping plus size women find brands they can shop today. But the future focus will be more big picture on how can we get clothing brands to successfully expand into the plus market and to stay in the plus market. My joke within the company is that if we're successful in what we do, we're going to make ourselves non-existent. but hopefully make some good money along the way.
Thank you again for coming tonight. I really hope this was helpful. And I just do, again, want to really thank Charlotte again for stepping in with the Q&A. That was super helpful. So, and I'm happy to stick around for a little while if you want to ask questions one-on-one. I also have a Calendly account that you can sign up for meetings with me on the Garage website. And you're also welcome to send questions to the VentureCat@northwestern.edu email. And oh yeah, and Charlotte offers office hours. We have a handful of current and recent graduate alumni entrepreneurs that offer office hours through the Garage on the Garage website as well. So, okay, all right, thank you.